What is going on? So you're interested in real estate investing, but you don't know where to start. Well, you're in the right place. In today's video, we're going to be going over a 10-step guide to get you from being a beginner to getting you to buying your first property and getting that thing rented out and actually receiving some rent, feeling like this is a dream come true with you becoming a real estate investor. But before we get into that 10-step guide, I do want to touch on first things first. And that first thing is educating yourself. This I cannot harp on enough. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, you have probably heard me say educating yourself, reading books, watching YouTube videos, which you're already doing, which is fantastic. You can go to seminars, you can attend actual in-person events, you can kind of get to know your local investors who are big in the space and just get around these people. Start knowing a little bit more about real estate. And of course, reading and learning about this stuff is going to help you so much down the road when you're actually an investor and you have to deal with certain things and certain stuff that comes up with tenants. So I just want to say first things first is educate yourself. That's not part of the 10-step guide. So let's get into those 10 things right now. So number one is to build your credit. For the bank to see you as a trustworthy borrower, you actually have to have a credit score showing that, hey, I can pay off debt. Of course, you might be one of those people that hate debt, which is good. I agree with you. You should hate debt. Debt can get bad very quickly for people. But just know that getting a credit score and having a good credit score is kind of one of those necessary evils, especially if you want to get a 30-year loan on a house. So if you don't have any credit at all, you have a complete zero, first thing that you should probably do is get a secure credit card from a local bank. This is usually you put like a cash deposit of a few $100. They kind of keep it on the sideline while you use the credit card, build it up. It's usually about 3 to 6 month period where they hold your money just in case you don't pay your bill. But once you show that you pay your bill every month and you're good to go, they give you back your $500 or whatever that money you put in, and now you're working off and building your credit. Now again, even if you do have a credit score, make sure that you're working on improving it, because the higher the better with this situation. And especially if you have a credit score below like the low sixes, 620, they don't like to see that anything lower than like a 620. You can get away with it, but again, you're going to be paying higher rates and you're going to be paying for it. So work on getting that credit as high as you can. Number two is to save money. Now, to buy any piece of real estate, you're going to have some money in the game. I know people go around all the time saying that you can get in with zero money down. Some cases you can, but chances are you're going to be going a kind of a traditional route for your first property, and you could get into that as little as 3.5% down, which is pretty minuscule. But remember that you do want to have a nest egg, because remember, you're buying an investment property. Therefore, you're becoming a landlord. You're going to have people living in your house that you're responsible for. You have to keep that building livable. You can't just, the boiler broke, you have no heat. Well, sorry for you. No, you have to fix that. And if you don't have $5 or $6 grand, well, that's why you have a nest egg. So make sure you start saving some money and just kind of plan it out a little bit. Look, I don't want to give you some arbitrary number, because investing in New Hampshire with a nest egg could be way different than investing in an expensive market like New York or California. That's a whole different nest egg. Number three is income. So the bank is going to want to see consistent income, meaning a good work history. Now, most banks will like to see you at the same job for the past few years and just steadily going at that job. It doesn't have to be that case. Usually they like 2 years at a place of employment. But again, if you have steady employment over the past 10 years, not where you're flipping like every 4 months to a new job, but like it's just you've made a couple switches in 10 years, they're okay with that. But don't be one of those people that are job jumping and just hunting for that 25-cent raise. It's not going to look good, especially when you're going to get a loan that shows, hey, I'm a pretty reliable person, but yet you can't hold a job. Because it's one of those things, when you start calling someone a certain name, if everyone happens to be that name, chances are you're that name. So chances are your place of employment isn't the problem. You're the problem. Just a little FYI, if I broke some harsh news to you, I'm sorry. But that's for W-2 employees. And if you're a 1099 or you're just self-employed, you have your own business, The bank can be a little bit more strict. Now, that's kind of details for another video because I could go in a whole rabbit hole, and I am going to make a video about that. So make sure you do subscribe if you want to learn more about that, because again, they're just going to be kind of a little bit more nitpicky, making sure you're actually legit on your income, because again, they're giving you a big loan over 30 years. And if you're lying about income, well, that's not good. So they get pretty nitpicky when you're a self-employed person. Number 4, pre-qualified. Now, a lot of people don't want to get pre-qualified because they're unsure if they're going to go buy a house right now. But they also don't want to do it because they don't want a hard hit on their credit score. But they get that mixed up with a pre-approval. So pre-qualification is just basically a very soft pre-qual is basically what it is. It's you're telling the bank, hey, I make X, I have this for expenses, and this is my credit score. They'll do a soft pull on your credit, but it doesn't actually lower your credit score. Once they do the pre-approval and confirm everything you told them about your income, about your credit score, about your job history, all that stuff. When they actually pull the hard credit score, that's when it'll hit. But getting pre-qualified is really just telling them, hey, these are this is my income, this is my expenses, and this is my job history. And they basically give you a number, so at least you can have a price point to be shopping around, because you don't want to be looking out of your budget and then not being able to afford the house you want. So make sure you go get pre-qualified. Hey, if you're enjoying this content so far, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as it helps so much with this channel. Now back to the video. Number 5 is to look at the market. So this is going to be some time well spent in research mode. And this one doesn't have to wait until this step. You can literally get going on this stuff today. Just go to Zillow, go to maybe mine's called Prime MLS, but whatever your local MLS thing is, you might have one that's better than Zillow, because they are sometimes not so good. Maybe even Realtor.com might have some better stuff in the fact of just like how it's laid out and the information you can see. Because when you're running numbers, you want to be able to actually know what the rents are and what their expenses are. So it's kind of hard sometimes finding that. That's why having a good real estate agent be like, hey, interested in property X, can you send me over the disclosure so you can see the whole breakdown? But again, when you're doing this research, just know your market. Know what the houses that you're looking at are selling for. Know what the houses you are looking at or the apartments you're looking at buying or renting for, so that when you do get to the point where you're actually becoming serious about this, you're looking to buy a house, you're confident in your numbers, because you're like, hey, I've been paying attention to this market for the past 6 months. I know what moves. I know what's happening. I know what this will rent for in this location, in this condition. So it pays off to know your market. Number 6 is offers. So this one is pretty self-explanatory. This is when you and your agent are actually going to be going out, looking at some houses and throwing in some offers. Depending on when you're watching this, what the market's like, you might get it on the first offer, you might get it on the 12th, 13th, who knows? It depends what your actual market is, what you're working with the loan, all that stuff. But this is the time to start putting in offers. And then once you actually get an offer accepted, that's where the next step comes in. 7, inspections. So I have, and I always will suggest to my buyers, get a home inspection and get a sewer line inspection at the minimum, because these are going to cover, of course, the general home inspection covers the whole building. So you know what you're buying. The sewer line, you actually know that that's all clear. You don't want to be buying anything with that, especially depending if you have a sewer line that goes to the street. That'll be a lot cheaper than having to replace a whole sewer system. So depending on where you're buying and what is normal around there will definitely be of more importance, because you don't want to be replacing a whole septic system that could cost you 20 grand. So make sure you're getting some inspections. Now, I do always tell my buyers, hey, putting in these inspections is going to make your offer less attractive to the seller, because say that you're working with an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down, and you have all the inspections that you want and a close in 45 days. But another offer comes in, maybe it's even lower, but it's all cash, it's a quick close, and it's no inspections. Well, if you're the seller, it's a pretty easy choice. You got one with a bunch of flags that you have to work around, and another one where it's like, hey, this dude's got cash and ready to pay me. I'm going to take that. So just understand, with getting into your first place, if you're house hacking and if you're using an FHA loan, it might get a little bit tough because you are competing with investors who usually have a lot of money. The one thing is, most bigger investors, they get to a certain point where small multifamilies is what you're probably going after, a 2 to 4 unit building. It's not worth it for them. So hopefully that's the case in your situation and you're not competing with them. But if you are, just understand you can't choose who you're competing with. Even if you put in a good offer, just go on to the next one. Put in another good offer. It'll land eventually, and you will get one with inspections. 8 is closing. So closing, this is the best part about the whole real estate process for everyone involved, because basically, especially as a buyer, you were paying attention to the market, you were looking at houses, you were doing all your research, you were going on showings, putting in offers. If the first one got accepted, great, but maybe you're putting in multiple offers, you're getting stressed out about that, and then the last 45 days you've been holding your breath, just hoping that the home inspection goes good, the appraisal goes good, everything works out with your lender, you get approved and nothing goes wrong with the mortgage and you're ready to close. So like, it's a lot of stress that you're like kind of thinking about. So once that closing day comes and you're at the closing table, it pays off so much because you're like, finally, this is here. But again, that's not the end of the road for you because you're an investor. And that brings us to our next point. 9, renovations if needed. So this one, 9 is renovations if needed. And the reason I wanted to bring this up, because maybe you'll buy a house that doesn't need any renovation. But if you do, just remember what you're renovating for, okay? You're renovating for a rental property, not your dream house. Don't put in these high-end finishes. Make it look good. Put in stuff, appliances, and all that stuff that is good, like brand-wise. It doesn't have to be the fanciest model. Update it to basically what is around you. Like, don't overdo it, because again, this is a rental. Just because you put in granite countertops over a laminate doesn't mean you're going to get a great return because you have granite countertops. Like that, understand what you're flipping for and just kind of take that into account, because you don't want to way overspend and you get the same rent if you spent 20 grand less on the renovations. And also remember, you're renting out this place. Tenants, it doesn't matter who they are. It's not their house. They're not going to treat it the same way you're going to treat your house. It's nothing against tenants. I used to be a tenant. It's just, it's different. It's that, like, if you're driving a rental car, chances are you're going to hit the gas a little harder than if you're driving your car. At least I do. Number 10, rent. Now this is the last part of you actually becoming an investor, and you're morphing into that landlord, and you're really seeing all this fruition come into play, and you're like, holy crap, this is becoming what I've been looking at. And this is probably your most important part, is when you're actually going to be screening tenants. And the reason I say this is the most important part, because this, I feel like, is that breaking point where there's a farm over here of people who hate landlord. Oh, don't you ever become a landlord, you're going to regret it. And then other people are like, hey, this is an easy way to get rich. And the reason being is because one of them over here has a good system for screening tenants. Over here, not so good. So you want to spend time screening tenants. I will literally miss a month or 2 of rent to put the right tenant in place, because I don't want to deal with a bad tenant, because I know headaches come with that tenant. So whoever you put in your building is going to make and break you as a landlord. Because if you have great tenants, yes, something might be wrong with your building, but chances are it's just the tenant being like, hey, something's wrong with your building. You might want to fix it so it doesn't get worse. That's how my tenants are. They're like, hey, look, like this went wrong. It's fine. I'm not mad, but I'm just letting you know. And it's a great way to go around that. I think I've had 5 to 6 different tenants, I think, in my last couple years of being a landlord. And knock on wood, I've never had to do any type of eviction, any type of anything with any of my tenants, because I really do screen them when they come in. I make sure they meet all my standards. That you have to be hard on that, or you're going to regret this. And remember that real estate investing is just a long-term game. So don't expect with this one thing you're going to become financially free. Don't expect that you're going to buy a couple houses and then everything's going to be sunshine and roses. Understand it's going to be a real process over the next 20, 30, 40 years, depending on when you start. And just understand that that's the game. Diversify and just kind of be consistent is one of the biggest things in real estate. It's just consistently buying houses and consistently letting them appreciate and not moving too much to a world event or a housing turn or whatever it is. Just don't overreact, just be consistent. And also remember, as a beginner, chances are if you're watching this video, you're probably gonna start with a house hack, which is where you live in one of the units, rent out to others. So remember that you don't have to hit a home run of a deal on the first one. Make sure it cash flows once you leave. But even if you get in there and you're still paying a couple $100 to live, that's such a big win. You're probably getting a house for less than most people have a car payment for. So just accept that as a win, even if you're not cash flowing on your first deal. And the last thing I want to say about this video is to have a team around you. Now this I didn't really want to put in as one of the steps because it's not necessarily a step, but just understand that it's great to have a good real estate agent. I always say get that relationship first because they'll kind of help you expand your other relationships. So they'll know a lender, they'll know maybe if you need a contractor, if you want a property management. I'm assuming at this point you wouldn't go property management, but if you wanted to, all those types of things. Make sure you have a good team around you so that if something comes up, at least you know who to ask the question to. That's the one thing about being in real estate. You're never, or not never, but you're not always going to have the answer, but just know who to call to get the answer. And that has been this 10-step guide of going from a beginner to buying your first rental property and actually collecting some rent and seeing this stuff become from a dream to a reality, because it is crazy. Once you actually get to the closing table, get someone in and collect that first month's rent, it just changes your whole perspective of money, time, and life. Trust me, it is life altering, I would say, at least. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but I don't think so. I've been in this few years and I could not ever imagine renting or just going down the regular route. I'd rather just house hack something and live for a couple $100 and have my time freedom, because that's way more to me than just having a single family house. But others will pick the single family house. So to each their own. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it added some value, and I hope that you go buy your first rental property in 2024. If you want more videos like this, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.